Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Okay. Can you hear me now? One, two, three, 4, 5, 6. All right. Am I good? Am I good to jump off?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70.
Or you can use this computer, whatever is easiest. Or if it's on your, where does it live?
It lives in.
It lives up there.
It lives up there, so give me a second.
I asked
1,
you to,
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
I think they're pretty good. I have some fun pictures that we did.
everybody. Can reconvene our meeting to open session. The board has been in executive session since 6 o'clock to discuss the superintendent evaluation and confidential employment matter. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, introductions.
Dave Hurst.
Chris Meyer.
Willow Bear. Jody Monroe.
Holly Dellenbaugh. Meredith Moriarty.
Jonathan Fishbein.
Wendy Sampson.
And Judy Kehoe.
And Christine Beck is not able to be here tonight. First on the agenda is approval of minutes. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the minutes from the June 2nd, 2021 regular board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. And next is our superintendent's report.
Thank you. So I have a couple of student announcements. On June 2nd, a group of high school computer science students participated in the annual Siena College High School Programming Contest. There were 16 BC students, and one team of 4 came out atop of head. They came in first of 30 other teams across the state to win first place in the online competition. I'd like to congratulate Albie Snyder, Nicholas Radosevich, Eric Gestel, and Charlie He. The team won by completing 5 problems, the most completed by any team in a record 3 hours and 16 minutes. So I'm not really sure how that all works, but it sounds great to me. So congratulations to those students and the other 16, all the 16 students who participated. I'd also like to congratulate our Capital Region Mastermind champions. Ben Goldberg, Caitlin Chung, Adam Cohn, David Burin, and Ben Eisenbraun won the Capital Region Masterminds Championships by winning 5 games in a row against many other excellent teams. The regional champion was held virtual, and they moved on to the state championship, and I don't know if anyone knows if they won or not. It was yesterday, but I guess we'll find that out. And Bethlehem has won the New York State Masterminds Championship 7 times since 2006, and it's coached by Paul O'Reilly, a teacher at the high school. So congratulations to those students as well. I also want to address some emails we have received about whether or not we are teaching critical race theory in our schools. I do think it's important to clarify that critical race theory is not a curriculum. There appears to be a widespread misunderstanding and misuse of the term, what it means, and how it relates to K-12 instruction. Critical race theory is an academic concept that was introduced by a group of legal scholars in the 1970s. The core idea is that racism is a social construct and that's not merely the product of individual bias or prejudice, but also something embedded in legal systems and policies. Recently, the term critical race theory is being misinterpreted as the basis of all diversity and inclusion efforts in schools, which I believe has led to some confusion. Critical race theory is not a synonym for cultural relevant teaching, something we strive to practice in our schools. This teaching approach seeks to affirm students' ethnic and racial backgrounds and is intellectually rigorous. One of its aims is to help students identify, discuss, and think critically about the causes of social inequality in our own life. BC does support culturally relevant teaching and other strategies to make schools feel safe and supportive for all students. In our schools, we teach history, and a part of teaching history is addressing how individuals and groups have been discriminated against both in the United States and the world. This includes discrimination based upon race, gender, religion, cultural, sexual orientation, etc. This is a part of teaching history and is what we will continue to do. Finally, I'd like to wrap up by thanking our teachers, staff, students, and families for all of their support, flexibility, and dedication as we navigated what was certainly one of the most challenging years, if not the most challenging year that any of us can remember or will remember. When we began the year, none of us knew how we were going to navigate this year, and we had some bumps in the road, but here we are at the end of June and beginning our plans for next year. We could not have had as much success without the joint efforts of everyone. So thanks, everyone, for a good year. And finally, my last comment is thank you to Chris Meyer, his last board meeting with us. It's been a pleasure having you on the board, and we will miss you. And if you get bored at all over the summer or next fall, feel free to join us for a meeting in person, hopefully. So that's my report.
Thanks. Any questions for Jody? Next up is the board report. First off, I wanted to congratulate the cast and crew of Macbeth. I had the opportunity to see it in person, but it is available to watch now on YouTube. And I particularly wanted to commend Ms. Edgar for finding a way to really be inclusive with the students that wanted to be part of it, even including students that were virtual and not able to be in the building to perform and rehearse. But it is a great show, and if you haven't had a chance to look at it, I encourage you to check it out. I also wanted to thank all of our elementary staff for working to put together the Spirit/Field Day today that took place at all the different elementary schools. I know it was different from pre-COVID times, but it was well received and really made the kids very happy. And I, also recognizing that we have, I guess, 1 week to go as of today, wanted to echo what Jody said and thank our students and families and our teachers for all of their hard work this year, and also our administrative team, particularly you, Jody, for really keeping everything on track and keeping our schools open this year. It was a absolutely enormous job, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And you already thanked Chris, so I don't even have to do that again.
Oh, do it again. Make it
I'll do it
beautiful.
again. I feel like we should applaud. Anyway, thank you. We have really valued your thoughts and your sense of humor, and both will be missed.
Well, I just want to say thank you to both of you, and thank you to everybody. I loved my 3 years doing this. Like, I sometimes you could make the assumption, well, he's leaving after 3 years, he must have hated it. Well, no, I love it. It's just, I have two little kids that I want to go to all their baseball games. And I want to be there for all those things. And I never, ever want to overcommit myself and promise something to someone that I can't follow through on. So I know there'll be a point when my boys are teenagers and they have no desire to be around their father. And at that point, I think that I definitely want to get back into public service. But for the time being, this is the decision. But I love this. This was great. I enjoyed working with all of you. And I just thank you for this great experience.
Thanks. The policy committee did meet just before we had our meeting tonight, and we took a look largely at the the policies that need to be reviewed on an annual basis, which will show up at our organizational meeting. And then I know there was also an audit committee meeting. Jonathan, if you are willing to say a couple
Sure.
words about that.
Yeah, we went through we had a discussion of the commencement of the new audit. Haven't decided exactly what we're going to audit, but there were some ideas tossed around. We also renewed, we signed the agreement for the new audit with Questar. Was Jody, it's Marvin that we did,
Yeah.
it's Marvin. With the new contract with Marvin, because the contract was up, we did a bid process, and we decided to stay with Marvin again. They've done an excellent job for the district, so we decided to stay with them. There's also, on the agenda tonight, we're accepting the board hopefully will accept the internal auditor annual risk assessment report. We also had a brief discussion of the concussion management audit and the, what was the other one? I think that was it. What's that, Chris? Right, the concussion management.
That was-
and
that was-
the-
that was
the
it?
attendance.
What?
The attendance one. We did, or was that?
The
No,
attendance
the attendance,
reporting, yeah.
right, the attendance audit, because we were looking at attendance and, how that was being tracked. So that also is on the agenda for tonight.
Correct.
Great, thanks. Did anybody have anything else that they wanted to add?
I have one thing. This goes back to the discussion we had on the artificial turf. I last weekend attended a funeral and stayed over with one of my former skating students and her family. And she had a basket of laundry, and I saw these little black teeny pellets in it, and I can pass these around. This is crumb rubber. This is the crumb rubber that is what is the filler for the artificial turf. I was told that she gets anywhere from a half cup to a cup every time her kid plays. Her son is a senior and plays soccer on artificial fields. The stuff does get into the dryer and the washer mechanisms. And I don't know to what extent it causes problems. I do know that they have somebody come in every 3 months to vacuum out the dryer, the washer, make sure that, it's not causing internal problems. Those are very small particles. Now, and this was after it had gone through the washer and the dryer, there's still particles falling out of the clothes. So I'm just thinking it's just another thing that we need to consider. Is this something we really want to be doing? I really haven't come down on a side. I don't know, is the risk worth the reward? I don't know. But I'm concerned. I also have pictures, which I'm happy to share, of her son's leg, which, I mean, yes, he's playing high-level soccer, but the injuries are a lot. And the open scar areas, the crumb rubber gets into it, they have to pick it out. And I know that, Dave in the hallway, when I showed it to him, he said to me that, he's played on it and it's safer than grass. So I don't know where to come down on this, but I think this is one more thing that we at least should find out a little bit more about.
Thanks, Jonathan. Anybody else?
Holly, I just wanted to mention that we had the end of the year meeting for the parent advisory group for the special ed program. It's not a board committee, but I do sit on that committee as a parent. We went over sort of lessons learned from this year and regrouped about what priorities we might want to look at for last year. So I just wanted to read out a little bit the general topics that came up last night were the new reading program for the fall, which everyone's very excited about, which will roll out for special ed and RTI level 3. So we had a lot of discussion about that and talked about wanting to regroup with parents sometime through next school year to sort of get some feedback about how that's working with students. But that was very well received. We talked about wanting a night where we could learn more about executive functioning and how to address behavioral issues and other concerns that come up with kids who have limitations on executive functioning. We talked about mainstream and inclusion and how we could continue work to better that in the district. There were concerns raised about transparency and communication with families, both through the CSE process, but also with the district in general. The number one example that was raised was the extended school year for the summer being shortened and parents not having sort of a heads up about that. So we talked through some of those issues. We talked about having some more postgraduate pathway presentations for next year, where maybe we would bring back students who have graduated and gone on to a variety of different programs or vocations. And there was a lot of concerns, and it's the end of the year, so this is on everybody's mind, but there were a lot of concerns raised about K-5 students having to switch buildings because of program needs for co-taught or skills programs. And I know that comes up at the end of every year, and it's an ongoing issue. I personally sat with Kathy for 2 hours a couple weeks ago and looked at where all of the programs were in all the K-5 buildings to sort of think about how we could reduce the need for students to switch around halfway through school. I know that students adjust because that's what kids do, but it does create a lot of emotion for a lot of families and a lot of students, and a lot of sort of trauma, and then having to graduate from an elementary school where you don't really know that many people, your parents don't know any of the other parents. It's just not ideal. So there was a lot of concerns raised about that, so I presume that'll be an ongoing discussion into next year as well.
Thanks, Willow. Anybody else? Next on our agenda are our, I'll say, presentations this evening. First up is our potential facilities improvement project overview of capital needs by Judy and Greg Nolte and Drew Jones.
Good evening again. Oh, that's loud.
So this is the 5th presentation on the potential facilities project.
You're unauthorized.
I got to wing it.
You have to click page.
No rush.
I know the hybrid is too much like Hal from 2001 for me.
Finish your third page.
All right. Next slide. All right, so as you are aware, our team has basically pared down this five-year facilities plan to about $36 million worth of various projects. We've had 4 previous meetings where we familiarized the board and community with the highest and largest projects. We've talked about synthetic turf. We've highlighted 5 components from each of the buildings and provided various information to the board and the community. Tonight, we're going to be providing some more information that you requested last meeting. And as always, we have Drew Jones, our district architect, on standby if I can't answer a question. So reiterating from previous presentation, Bethlehem's aid ratio consistently hovers around 70%. The most important fact is that this is a budget neutral proposal. The debt service is fully offset by the building aid due to the significant amount and use of our capital reserve. So this is basically good news. And I understand, Judy, that you have additional good news for the board?
Yes. So related to capital projects, the capital project that we just completed, we're financing $27 million, and we sold those notes today, and we got an interest rate, a net interest cost of 0.168% for a one-year note, which is wonderful. There were 6 companies who bid on that debt, so it was a very competitive range, and that's great news for the district because it doesn't cost you very much. On this $27 million note for 1 year, it's going to be about $45,000 only in interest. So,
That's good.
good news. Good time to borrow.
So tonight I'm going to be talking about additional information that you want to hear from the stakeholder group meetings that we've been holding for the past couple weeks. We talked a little bit about the middle school tennis court refurbishment and the scope and the cost that you may want to consider. Roof comparisons, and then synthetic turf, the fill material comparison and our recommendations on that. So, back one, please. So we have 10 stakeholder groups that we've had various meetings on so far. They consist of various administrators, supervisors, teachers, support staff, and coaches. The goal is to solicit input and information to refine the project scope and the design approach. We want to assure that the end product of what we end up building is exactly what the users want and need. So at previous meetings, I've talked about the feedback that we received from the synthetic turf group, the middle school auditorium group, the middle school LMC group. You can go to the next slide. But recently we met again with the FACS group, and they basically are looking for a number of things. They want to improve the classroom and the kitchen space to provide state-of-the-art teaching area and learning environment. If you've been to both of those FACS rooms at the middle school, they're in rough shape. With the increased use of microwaves and hot plates, we're continuously blowing circuits and trying to update the service there. So one of the items that they would like is basically sufficient utilities for all of this new equipment. Right now, we have a lot of kids in specific kitchens, too much for them to actually learn. So we would actually create one shared kitchen that will have about 7 student stations and then a teaching demonstration station. We actually have one here at the high school with a little camera over it, and this way all of the students can see what the teachers are working on. And then we would have, instead of the rooms being downstairs and upstairs, we would have proximal classrooms here. So that meeting was just held on June 9th. A June 1 meeting was held for the technology rooms. They're looking for flexible spaces to allow the upper curriculum to be taught to the younger students. They use words like multi-use, collaborative, inspiring. They're also looking for quite a bit of technology in these rooms. Next. At Slingerland's for the basement classrooms, well, they wanted to basically change the perception of these rooms, and instead of basically being the basement classrooms, more of like a fine arts area. We would move the OTPT room upstairs and basically better utilize those 4 rooms that are downstairs. They want to make it fresh and on par with the other classes in the school by adding basically new ceilings and basically upgrading the finishes there. So that meeting was held on June 1. Both Glenmont and Hammergirl have what we call pit areas. These are like the sunken areas as you walk into the school. They're over to the right. They're in the 91 wing there. And basically they're kind of focal points in the schools and have multiple purposes. They've been used for one-on-one speech, aid assignments, OTPT, the 1,000 book club, tutoring, meeting place for student enrichment. It's just been, each school had various uses for that space. But they wanted to keep the pit concept, but basically just kind of update it, improve some of the storage and caseworks that is around it, maybe include some technology, acoustics. It's in that open area, so if, and sometimes students pass by, so it's a little difficult to teach if you are one-on-one, and change carpet to resilient flooring, just because the carpet set there is basically 1991. So that was the concept for the pits. We had 2 kitchen meetings. One, Hammergrill, they indicated that that the flow and the functionality of the line is good, but they're basically looking to improve the ventilation, of course, new appliances. Over the years, we've done various changes to the floor, and there's some drain issues, so we would basically correct that. And of course, upgrade the finishes. If you've seen Glenmont kitchen, that's what we did on the last project, and it's pretty nice. Similar goals for the Slingerland's kitchen, but there we are looking to design a better flow for the serving line and the tray return. And then the other thing that was part of this was also improvements to the cafeteria, looking for acoustics, ventilation, floor, and upgrade the finishes in the cafeteria as well. They like it, or they would like it cheery, inviting, and safe. Transportation, they suggested that they were looking for 4 administrative offices to meet the current needs. There's an existing conference room and file storage. They were looking to upgrade and improve upon that. Right now, if you go there, it's hard to know where to go if I'm a visitor, so they want to create a welcoming public entrance and reception area. We recently completed an in-house project where we moved one of their admins up front to basically kind of help Karim out there and basically receive anybody that might be coming. Signage, we would replace the 4 separate HVAC systems with 1 high-efficiency system, and basically improve access to the area. So that is, in a nutshell, a very quick recap of all the group stakeholder feedback that we've received in the past couple weeks that we've had. So at the board meeting, basically the board wanted the team to review and report on middle school tennis courts reconstruction. I believe this was either a low, it might have been a medium priority on the 5-year plan. And basically there is a bank of 6 lockers, 6 tennis courts here and two here as well. Sorry, yeah. According to the athletic director, in the next 2 to 3 years, the Suburban Council, Section 2, is leaning towards offering a modified level of girls and boys tennis, okay? And presently right now, there are times that JV tennis both practices and have their matches there. And of course, phys ed uses the area as well. So we looked at this, and we would suggest at this point a full depth reconstruction of the courts, of both sets of courts, and that would include new coating, new striping, new fencing, the nets, the posts, and of course appropriate grading and drainage. And basically we came up with a cost of about $869,000 for this part of the proposal. There was also a desire to consider a pavilion at the high school, specifically at the stadium. The pavilion there, you can kind of see it right here. This is that stone lot right next to the new bleachers. This is Van Dyke right here. That's not to scale, but it's the general idea. But the pavilion could be used for an eating, picnic area during events. It could host year-end celebrations, college signing ceremonies, the Outstanding Seniors Award. It would enhance, and we could host outdoor education classes. We're seeing more and more classes come outside. It could serve as some protection and shelter in light to moderate weather. It could be a meeting place for physical education attendance during the track and field unit when they're out here quite a bit. And of course, it would be an additional community resource there. But we would be looking at maybe a 24 by 60 pavilion on concrete pad. And we estimated that the overall cost would be about $150,000. All right, at the last board meeting, we discussed the possibility of green roofs. That led to some questions about black-colored roofs versus white-colored roofs, which is basically EPDM versus TPO roofs, okay? The bond project has existing TPO roofs that are out of warranty and that are beyond their useful life, that are being replaced or proposed to be replaced at the high school, middle school, Ellesmere, and Hammergrill. All right, so most of the district's roofs are already EPDM. Over the past couple projects that I've been involved with, we've actually replaced the old TPO roofs with EPDM because of some shrinkage and some seam issues that we've been having with the TPO. The black EPDM roofs actually aid in snow melting and draining water away. This alleviates the weight on the roof during the winter times and also mitigates potential leaks. With this proposal, all the new roofs would have appropriate thickness of insulation, which will help reduce any thermal gain into the building. As far as warranty goes, EPDM typically comes with a 30-year warranty, where TPO roofs typically have less, and we've seen anywhere from 15 to 25. So the project team does recommend EPDM roofs for this project. All right, as well, at the last board meeting, we had some conversations about non-petroleum synthetic turf field options, okay? In the industry, there is no turf system that is petroleum-free, okay? The grass part of it, the backing, the shock pad are only made with petroleum-based products, okay? There are, however, non-petroleum options for the turf, or those small little pebbles that are spread throughout the grass that give you the cushion and traction. So we talked about these options back on the 19th, and I'm going to touch upon them again now. So non-petroleum fill material, all right, one is EnviroFill. All right, this is an acrylic-coated sand particle. You heard from our architect and design consultant that this material was recently used at a school in Western New York, and they're not overly happy with it. It's not as absorbent to shock for the athletes, and it's more abrasive than the standard crumb rubber. The school actually does plan on changing this material. Brock fill is actually wood particles, engineered wood particles, and this is a relatively new product without much use or testing yet. Our designers we've had conversations on this, and they are not comfortable with recommending its use because they don't know how long it's going to last or how it's going to perform over time. And I don't think that the district would be best served by being kind of one of the first ones on using this product. So still stay here. The cork fill, I mentioned, is not suitable for this Northeast region. I was told that it has a tendency to float in rain, all right? So there are two options for petroleum-based fill material, all right? EPDM basically is a virgin material that is not made from recycled tires, okay? It is a newly manufactured material from petroleum products. SBR, also known as crumb rubber, that's the most common, and it's the most widely used in synthetic fields, and this is at all levels, even at the collegiate level as well as the pro level. The cost is about $5 a square foot, and this is actually what has been recommended by our design team to use on this project. So why are they recommending the crumb rubber? Well, one, it's most cost effective. It's the most widely used and commonly used. It's time tested. Since there's not a petroleum-free synthetic turf system, I guess why would we consider a non-petroleum product for just this fill material, just this crumb rubber material? The EPDM is a newly manufactured project, as I mentioned, from petroleum sources. If as a district, if we're looking for maybe a greener approach for this aspect of the project, then the crumb rubber is actually the way to go because it's a recycled product, okay, from the tires, which would normally just go into a landfill. So it's possible that this fill, the crumb rubber, would actually come from an existing field and might have already been recycled and reused. So the design team is recommending to the board that we go with the most common and widely used material being the crumb rubber.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
About this? So with the SBR versus the EDPM, I was doing a little bit of side research. And I guess it used to be at least, and this is why I'm just curious, I don't know, Drew, if you have any information about this, that the SBR, the crumb rubber coming from recycled tires, because it was coming from recycled tires, it contained higher lead levels and I think benzene and some other chemicals in the rubber. So I'm wondering, I mean, I get that it's more cost effective than the EDPM, but if you go with the EDPM, are you avoiding those issues of lead and chemicals that might come along with the crumb rubber that comes from recycled tires?
Yeah, so I believe, so, and Drew, maybe you can expand upon this. Yeah, you would eliminate certain potential, okay, because the lead probably is coming from your steel belts. That is basically removed. I think that there is a washing mechanism that happens in the development of crumb rubber. Drew, do you have anything to add as far as?
Sure. I can't stress this enough. The crumb rubber that is going to be used on this field or any newly
Drew, hold on a
constructed-
second, okay?
Yes.
Can we turn him up at all?
Okay. Sorry, we couldn't hear you.
1, 2, 3, 4. How do I sound now?
Better.
Bye-bye.
Okay, I'll continue. Thank you for working with me. So I can't stress this enough. The crumb rubber that is used in new fields is, the vast majority of it has been used on previous fields. This is not tires that came off the road yesterday, were ground up today, and then used on your field. The other important thing to know here is that it's not simply ground up tires and then that's the end of it. They are treated, they are cleaned, and then they are used. So I think probably early on when this material was developed, there might have been some follow-on carcinogens or effects that come with it. But today, when you buy creme rubber, it's been used many times, it's been cleaned many times, and it doesn't have as much of a risk in that arena as, say, if we ground up the tires off of my car and and use them uncleaned on a field. As far as EPDM is concerned, there might be less of a risk there, but again, EPDM is a product that is made the same way that the rubber for your tires is made, and it's brand new. It's made and new in the world. And in a certain sense, one of the reasons we're suggesting crumb rubber is the fact that it's already been used many times, either in tire form or in fill form, and by its continued use, and frankly, use after the turf field that we're designing here is decommissioned, it'll be taken offline, washed again, and then reused again. We see it as the greener option between the two, just from a recycling standpoint and a material standpoint. So I think that there's very little risk with creme rubber from a lead standpoint, certainly. And we think that it's the more ecologically appropriate response when we're dealing with a petroleum-based fill material to reuse material that's been used before rather than create brand new EPDM to create the fill. So if we want more information here, I can take this back to our landscape architects again if we've got specific questions. But this is where we are. This is where we are right now, and the information I'm comfortable sharing.
Was it just strictly lead, the potential of increased
That was
lead?
one, there were a couple, I mean, I think, I can't remember the other one. I feel like benzene sticks in my head for some reason, but
Benzene.
lead in particular, I know, I understand that in California, there was some litigation with respect to lead levels in turf fields at schools. And I understand, I think that that litigation was settled and the manufacturers were going to address the lead levels. But I just want to make sure we have all the information and that the manufacturers that we might be looking at are conscious of, I don't know whether they test the crumb rubber in their facilities to make sure that, you know, those kinds of things are not present.
So I'm not, and we can probably follow up with this. You have certain standards, ASTM, that certain materials maybe have to follow. I'm not sure if there's an industry standard testing that crumb rubber has to pass and be tested for. Drew, do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head, but every material that goes into these turfs has been very thoroughly tested, and we have basically material data sheets for every component. I think the one we can certainly get to the bottom of the crumb rubber issue and understand its materiality a little bit better, and you can bet your bottom dollar that there are extensive testing from these manufacturers on all the materials, and we can follow up with that if you'd like.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Can I say something real quick, though? Like, I think that we should look into these things. Like, it's our kids' safety, you know, it's their health and well-being, so we want to make sure that all these things are looked in, and we should look at all the possibilities, because we do want to get the best one. I'm thinking about it in terms of the turf field, and I'm thinking, okay, well, what if we don't get it? Like, what if we say no to this and we don't get it? Well, then our kids are going to go to Aframs on a turf field because they can't play on our field because they're wet. Or we're going to pay Albany High School, like we did again this year, for their football so we can play on their turf field. And then we're going to go play all our away games against our Section 2 opponents on their turf fields. And then they're going to sign these kids to go to college, and they're going to go to college and play on turf fields. So it's just, like, I hear it, and I want to have an open mind, and I do have an open mind. And if there is, you know, if it's the EPD, if it's the Brockville, whatever, like, I wouldn't, have no, you know, issue with any of those. I would be more than willing to investigate all of them. It's just that if we say no to this, it's not going to stop kids from playing on turf fields. They're just going to go to another field that we don't own and pay them to use their turf field. And so it's not really stopping the problem, it's just costing us more money so they can continue to play.
I'd just like to echo that the concern, you know, is real, but millions and millions of athletes play on turf fields every day, every year. And we could only locate one lawsuit? It seems like if it was a really dangerous product, people would not be allowing their children to play on it. It would not happen. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I will say this, though, to Holly, like, I think you're right. I think when they started this process, I think they just kind of slapped it together, and there probably were some hot messes when this all started. So I believe it. I believe that lawsuit. But I also believe that, you know, corrections were made, and I think that there's been improvements in the process. Because there probably were mistakes made. You know, if we were the first place in the country to get a turf field, I'd be like, oh, crap, you know, this is tires, like, this could be really bad. But I feel more comfortable knowing that there are more and more places using it, and all these fields in the Capital District are using it. You know, once again, you know, it's my last meeting, so I can kind of ha-ha and walk away from all this. But as we're speaking right now, if I would consider any of those, absolutely. I have an open mind, just with the understanding that one way or the other, the kids are going to be playing on a turf field, whether it's our field or the field that we pay somebody else to use.
And I should clarify, I have no idea if there's not more than one. I just happened to be doing a little side research and found that information. So I can't speak to the numbers. And I also just want to clarify that I'm not against it. I just want to make sure we're doing our due diligence.
Oh, and I think that's great. I think we should. You know, it's, you know, I think one of the great things about this board is that we truly pride ourselves and we care about these students. You know, their safety is really important to all of us. You know, and so that's something we really should be proud of. You know, and continue to investigate this. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, this is just me speaking. Just me. You know, I really think that we need this as a district, just, you know, to maintain our level of programming that we have, and also as a great community resource.
And like everything, synthetic turf fields have evolved over the decades that they have been around. You know, they used to just be, you know, put on concrete, and, you know, they didn't have this shock, and so the design has evolved, and the products have evolved. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we'll get back to the board regarding any standards, regarding testing standards, that whatever we spec have to attain.
I just had a question on a different topic. You mentioned the technology classrooms that was in the middle school, is that correct?
Correct.
Could you just talk to us a little bit about what those are going to look like? Are they going to look like our high school computer technology classrooms, or are these, or what you're speaking of, a different type of classroom?
Dave?
Yeah, so it's actually most similar to the learning spaces that we just created in the LMC here.
Okay.
They're looking for really wide open, flexible spaces so that you could work. It's essentially 2 classrooms, maybe 3, depending on how it ended up, the final design ends up being. But it could be used as one big, huge open space where teachers could work with classes simultaneously on projects, or you could divide it up into smaller learning spaces. But it's, yeah, not like your traditional computer lab. There would not be computers in there. I mean, our kids all have Chromebooks.
Yeah.
So, you know, the days of computer labs outside of very specialized needs, like some of our art classes have to use Macs for the artwork that they're doing. So it would not be like a traditional computer lab. It would be a much more open space more like a makerspace concept.
Okay.
With flexible seating. Again, the ability to do small group work, large combined classes work. We also see it as a place that we could use for doing professional development with teachers after school, because it would be just, kind of think of D122, similar to that even. Just
Okay, so-
a nice, big, open, flexible space that allows, single class, multiple class to work on their different technology needs. So if you think about like 6th grade, most of the technology work is around basic computing. And then 7th and 8th grade get more into engineering and design principles. So again, we're a space where kids can work on projects, work collaboratively, or when need be, structure it more like a classroom.
So these would be classrooms that teachers would like reserve?
No, so these are classrooms that are already being used by, so it's, right now, Tom Michaelik and Jim Farnan, it's their technology rooms are sort of limited in just the way that they're structured. So
Okay.
it's really just a more, give them a more modern space.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, they wouldn't be like free to sign out throughout the day, because the tech classes would be in there.
Okay, I
Yeah,
guess
yeah.
that's what I wasn't quite understanding. Thank you.
So a quick reminder about timeline. Our next meeting is July 6th. We'll have another public meeting to refine scope and costs. The timeline has the board finalizing the scope and the costs on August 11th, and then the public vote on the 28th of September. And then, as I've said before, we've done a great job on the website. There's lots of information on it that's being updated. There was literature that was sent out to residents about the potential project that was asked about last time. Okay, so as far as next steps, I'm not sure if we want to make a decision whether or not you want to include the middle school tennis courts in the referendum at this point.
Can I say something about the tennis courts real quick? I would just I want to thank Christine, because it's Christine who brought it up. I want to give her credit where credit's due. The tennis courts are one of the few things that the public just has immediate access to, the track and the tennis courts. Those are things that the community can just hop on, and to have those, and to redo those, I think would be just a tremendous upgrade, and it would be very, very useful. I think something that, when the public goes, where's my tax dollars go? Well, you have a tennis court here. You can use it, and anybody can use it. And particularly if there is going to be modified tennis, and you're trying to have 3 levels of tennis playing at the same time, we're going to need them. So I would be a big advocate for that.
They're
I
in pretty
would agree.
bad shape too, aren't they, Greg, when you guys went and looked at them?
Yeah, there's
not-
some pretty substantial cracks in them. If you remember, I think the last bond project, we cut away the woods because we would always have moss, and we still have quite a bit of leaves blowing from those very large trees. The set of 2 is even worse because they are so much closer to the woods there. So, yeah, they're not in great shape.
Does the fencing need to be replaced? Because, does it have to get taken out to resurface?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we, for many years, we used to have tremendous vines growing up through. It's actually in pretty bad, especially the field side. It's real bad.
And just in regard to the stadium pavilion, if you've looked at that space, it's kind of by the track, it's just a cement block right now. So I'm not really sure what the purpose was there a purpose for that?
Well, that was our staging area for many, many, many bonds, where you had construction trailers out there. Before that, it used to be the area where, for football games, the families that would bring their kids that weren't watching the games, they're over there and they're just throwing the football around. There used to be concession.
Right. But why was there concrete poured there? Or it's just stone right now?
It's just stone.
It's just stone. So there wasn't a plan to
Yeah,
pour
we
concrete?
put drainage in there,
Oh,
so
got it. Okay.
yeah, it's just stone. And, Len Keyes, the athletic director, as a, he would like to see that develop, because he could see, basically the list that I provided you are items that he suggested that he would like to see under that pavilion, so.
Greg, what would each sorry. What would each of these add to the cost? And individually, what would the cost to add each one of these into the project?
All right, so the middle school pavilion, we estimated at $150,000.
High school.
High school pavilion, thank you. And the middle school tennis courts was
69.
$869.
It's about $1 million.
Okay. And the amphitheater?
So the amphitheater, that was a medium priority that we didn't spend a lot of time looking at. We don't think that the vision of the middle school principals fits with what goes in front of that LMC. So that would have to take a little more work. Initially, it was estimated at $76,000, but knowing that they may be looking for it for a performance, are they going to need electric? We don't, that scope is really undefined at this point. It was just another outdoor open seating area that they were looking for. And we can look at that more if that's something you want us to do.
Judy, what would, right now, let's say it's 100,000, you're looking at about 1.12 million added to this. What would that do as far as how much we would have to either, is there more money out of the one of the restricted funds that we can use, or do we have to bond it? How does that work?
Well, we would get the authorization for the total project amount, and then we would show the funding offsets, which would be largely coming from the two separate capital reserves that we have set up. When I do my presentation, third presentation tonight, looking at the uses of the federal monies, we can also use some of those monies as an offset. And I think using those monies, which is new for our discussions tonight, I think will keep us right on track with this budget neutral target that we're looking for. So once we have these numbers, I'll get you a more refined estimate, but off the top of my head, I think we're still budget neutral.
If we're looking at staying budget neutral, I think now's the time to jump on, especially if we're getting interest rates like what Judy was just able to do today. So I'd be all for looking seriously at all three of these additions.
Okay, so what I would recommend is that let us meet with the principals, with whatever stakeholder group, find out exactly what they are looking for, see if it's feasible where they were looking for it to be, and then come up with a plan and report back to you and what the scope would be and what the potential cost would be.
And you're talking about the amphitheater on that, as far as the tennis courts and the high school pavilion, that you pretty much have mapped out already?
We've already done that, yes.
Okay. All right.
Not that I will be here at the next meeting, but like, is
You
it
could
possible
be.
to? It could be. I could have a free wacky Wednesday. To see pictures of the pavilion, to see like what you're thinking of it being, I think might be useful, because it's like, are we saying it's gonna be like the middle school pavilion? Is that the assumption?
I actually showed one, yeah, we can provide a picture of what we're thinking. We talked about pavilions at each of the elementary schools, and I think I gave an example in one of the presentations. But I can show another one, just so the group knows.
We had referred to those as shade structures. So it's basically the concrete pad with the metal roof.
So we should hold on these two decisions at this point.
I think we can, I think everyone is, does anyone want any more information on those two pieces, or are we good with that?
I'm
more description on what the stadium pavilion would look
Right.
or be. And
Hey.
then, I don't remember a discussion of an amphitheater.
No, we didn't have a discussion of the amphitheater. We would like that, I think. But the tennis courts, I think we're fine with. And, you know, just a little more on the Stadium Pavilion, what it's going to look like, what the uses are, things like that.
The amphitheater came up when the stakeholder group was meeting about the LMC, and there wasn't much discussion about it. It's a question about how much use would it actually get? What would it look like in the front of the building like that? You know, they already have an outdoor stage and an outdoor pavilion. I mean, we live in the Northeast. How much outdoor use are you really getting? Unless there, you know, maybe climate change will have more use of it, but we could get more information.
It would never rain on a performance day,
No,
so that
no,
doesn't
right.
happen, so you wouldn't have to worry about that.
Certainly not torrentially.
Okay, is there other information board may want at the next meeting at this point? Okay,
I'm good.
all right. Good, thank you.
Thanks, Greg. I guess next is our food service update.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. So, as I do annually, I'm going to give you an update on what's happened last year in food service department world. A lot has happened. Our COVID has been really, it has created a lot of change for the way that we do what we do. We have had to feed students in a lot of different models that we're not accustomed to, and we've had to adapt to that. USDA, which is the program we run under, they allowed us to serve free meals to all students. So that was the first big thing that changed how we were going to do what we needed to do. So we were serving on-site meals to students once the school year started. And K-5, I worked with all of the level principals to see what they needed. And each level needed something a little bit different. So our services bent to meet those challenges. At the elementary school level, we did a pre-order system with the meals delivered and served in the classrooms. So obviously during a normal time, our students would come down to the cafeteria and eat in the cafeteria, go through the serving line. We had to have teachers fill out a Google Sheet in the morning, so we created a Google Sheet. Teachers filled that out. Students typically had 2 to 3 choices. And then our kitchen would use that Google Sheet, which would be organized by either the classroom and grade, to pack a cart that would then go to the classrooms with the meals that were ordered for each classroom. So it was an involved process, and it involved a lot of accuracy from all the levels. So K-5, that was what we did. We're hopeful to, in the fall, be getting back to seeing the kids in the cafeteria again and serving them online. That was definitely a challenge for our staff. And then at the middle school level, grades 6 through 8, we did a pre-order system as well. So our menu that we posted online had links on it to Google Forms, and the students would fill those forms out. Our middle school cook manager would then take the information from the forms and use that to determine what meals needed to go to what locations at what meal times. Because at the middle school, kids were eating in the library, the gym, and the cafeteria, so they were split. Thankfully, they were going by their homerooms, so we could organize them a little bit by that to get meals. But obviously, you can imagine that was tricky to get meals where they needed to go for students, because you're dividing that grade into 3, and then you're trying to make sure you get the right amount of each option when there's 2 to 3 options to each space. And the gym and the library were on the 2nd floor, and they had to use a cart to take the elevator up to get the meals up there. So that created a lot of challenges. However, my staff did a great job rising to the challenge at the middle school level. But again, we are very looking forward to seeing the kids back in the cafeteria again and coming through the line. We've talked about for fall, even if we have to split them up and have them eat in different locations, that they might still be able to come online and get their food and then go to the location. Because one of the biggest challenges was if the count, say we didn't get the right count coming in, so students didn't fill out the form, something happened, we always tried to put more food on the carts. However, sometimes we'd miss the mark, and then a radio call had to come, and then food had to go up on the elevator again. So there were some times where it was tricky doing the middle school service. But like I said, we really made it through with not very many hiccups, majorly. And then on-site for 9 through 12, so high school students were all hybrid, so we only had around half of them every day. So we thought we could distance them. As you'll notice on the floor, we have patterns for the students to come through the lines. We had set up a grab-and-go station by the lower gym where students could pick up. We also had to consider students that didn't have a lunch period that might want a place to eat lunch, whether they were bringing it from home or getting it from us. So we created, with the admin here, some desk eating areas in the hallway, and they could pre-order and we would have it ready for them with their name on it, their entire meal, that they could just pick up and go and eat and then make it to their next class once they finished eating. So just a few examples of how we had to adapt and our staff had to adapt to different service models. This is just on site during all of this. So next slide. So then off-site, we had remote student meal service. USDA had offered a lot of waivers where parents can pick up meals, flexibilities to meal pattern, allowing us to put together bulk meal packs, which gets into what we did somewhat with our remote meal service. In the summer feeding program that we did the spring after COVID became part of life, we were delivering and offering pickup. When the school year came, we thought that pickup might pose a problem from the location where we could run this big of a program, which was the high school in this parking lot here. We were worried about traffic backup. So discussed it with administration, worked with the transportation department to do a delivery only option for our hybrid and fully remote students who are learning at home to get meals. So we worked out a Thursday, Friday distribution. Hybrid meal packs went out on Thursdays, and remote 5-day or 4-day, if there was a 4-day week, Friday, those went out on the buses. We had a sign up. So when we were doing the meal packs, the way they looked, and I have a few pictures of what they looked like the remote meal pack, which was for 5 days, would have bulk items like a half gallon of milk, a quart of juice. We would try to do individual items. Some of them would be frozen and have prep instructions on them. We got these labels that were very nice that said BC Food Service on them, and we could put whatever we needed to on there. So if we needed to make something, have a nutrition information on it or preparation instructions, we could do that sort of on the fly as needed. Can you go back one? Okay, so with, because sign up or quarterly students could decide whether they wanted to be remote, hybrid, come back to school, we were checking that off because we needed to verify whether we made sure we weren't double dipping on if a kid was coming to school and if that was something we wanted to make sure that we were tracking. So we did also send out, if there were any families that went to fully remote, they could add on to the program. When we did a hybrid partial week bag, my staff had to keep track of that, so which A or B student got 2 and 3 days of meals, and we had a system for how to make sure that that went to the right student, got to the right address. And then we also provided meals during the school closures that happened. So when school was shut down, we would provide grab-and-go meals a breakfast and a lunch to every student that would come and pick up from the high school. If, say, just one elementary school was closed, we would make sure that they knew that that was available here for them. If families were quarantined, we would pivot very quickly to try to get them the information that they could get on our delivery meal service. And we did get a lot of people who came in and out. So it was constantly managing that list of who needed to get meals at home and not. But I think this remote piece was done by 2 full-time and 1 part-time person, and I helped them. I was on hands-on with them a lot just because it was a new thing for us. And I just can't say enough about the work that they did and how much of an effort this was, and really the amazing job that I feel like this was for us this year. So so this is one example of what we sent for the 5-day bag. Frozen, we were sending out as much fresh product as we could manage to do. But as you can see, we're packing this all in one bag that is being delivered to their doorstep. So it's really an amazing amount of food. So next slide is another example. This was one we sent out, I think, last week. So, and we made the almond breeze in there reminds me, we did a lot of diet-specific packed bags and meals. Everything from gluten-free to dairy-free to multiple needs. We were meeting them to the best of our abilities for those that needed it. Oh, and we did put a survey out mid-year. We wanted to see what families were thinking about the meal packs. Was there anything they wanted us to change? What did they like? What did they not like? And just a couple of things. One of the comments was that this keeps their child connected to the school community, makes them feel like they're still in school. It's a huge benefit. They were very grateful for the service. We had families that mailed us cards. I had a couple of families send me pictures of the students eating the lunch at home during their day. It was just the gratitude that was expressed for the service we provided was great. And this was our menu. I just put it in here that you could see. So we put this out, and then of course hybrid hybrid students would get a 2 or 3 day version of this. Yeah, but that's what that is. And just a reminder that this service was free for everyone, and every meal brought reimbursement in for our program. So normally I give a bit of information on each school level and how we're doing in comparison to the prior year. This year, as far as sales and meal counts go, well, this year was so different that I just wanted to sort of express, our focus was more on the meals because that was where the reimbursement went. Our high school came back onto the school lunch program before fall of last year. For those of you that don't know, we had been off the program for a number of years so that we could serve a wider variety of foods to students. The USDA guidelines as far as nutrition regulations for a la carte or snack offerings outside of the meal are fairly stringent, and we needed to, we were off the program in order to provide that wider variety of options. But with this situation, we knew we were going to be serving mainly meals. So we pivoted and switched to getting back onto the USDA program at the high school, which is currently we are and will continue to be in next school year as well. So meals were free for all students, including high school students, and high school meals were reimbursed. We got reimbursement for. So our remote program served over 50,000 breakfast and lunch meals delivered during the school year. On-site, 9 through 12 high school, we had 5,000 breakfasts and 20,000 lunches. Middle school, 3,000 breakfasts and 21,000 lunches. And on-site for elementary, 14,000 breakfasts and 113,000 lunches, which is more than, 250,000 meals that we served this school year. So with all of the closures considered and different things, that's a huge number. I really feel like our program and our staff did so much work this year, and a lot of them are tired, which is why we're doing a summer program this year, but we're giving them a little 2-week gap to get some break in before we start that, because they've put in so much effort, and it's been to provide a really great service to students and families. So summer feeding last year, I talked a little bit about. I'm going to talk about this year's, so I just wanted to compare for you guys and give you the comparison. We did a pickup or delivery option. Delivery was only upon request if it was needed. It was a 5-day meal bag for everyone last summer, and we had bulk and individual items in there. So like this summer, similarly, service was to any child 18 and under. They don't have to be enrolled in Bethlehem School District. It's a national program, so we can offer it to any student or any child 18 and under. Last summer, we served a lot of students that were pre-K. That was there were more of them than I thought there would be, and we also sent meals to schools out, and then students that were doing daycare at YMCA for like first responders children at the time. We also distributed and worked with the backpack program. So with our meals last summer, backpacks went out to families that were on backpack program. And our participation last year was almost 14,000 breakfast and lunches served. It was around 300 students a day coming through our door, and we had, I think it was a 2-hour window that they were coming through, so that it was always very fast-paced. And the program last year operated efficiently at a slightly better than break-even with the reimbursement versus what we had to staff and food to run the program. So that was our menu for last summer that we sent out to our families. So we had a 6-week cycle menu, so we did everything twice. Again, like whole, like milk, they got the half gallon and quart of orange juice. And as much as we could, we tried to make things that were easy for them to prepare at home or didn't need preparation. So this summer, we're going to do summer feeding again. This is probably the last summer that we'll be eligible to do summer feeding. Normally, we don't meet the income criteria, the threshold of free and reduced percent to qualify to run a summer feeding program. However, I do think it's a great service that we can provide and offer while we are eligible to do so. This summer, we're going to do a little bit of a different service. We're going to do daily meal service, pick up from the high school around the lunch hour, so 11 to 1. We're going to start July 12th and the week before, first week of September. We're going to give them lunch that's ready to eat, and then a shelf-stable breakfast that will go with them and they can consume the next morning. I think the decision to move to this was just because we have the ability to do this. I don't know that, I think families, I've had a feedback that a lot of families want this type of service. Some still want the bulk pack, but that's a big staffing thing to do all at once versus biting off a little bit each day and offering a daily pickup. Also, we aren't going to provide transportation. It's going to be a pickup only service. I mean, there may be an exception and we may look at that, but if someone really is in a need situation, we might be able to figure that out. But for the most part, we're looking for families to pick up. And again, service is free to anyone 18 and under, and they don't have to be enrolled in BC, and we're looking for a break even again this year. That's our goal. We put a survey out to see how many families might be interested and how often they would come, and we're estimating between 225 and 250 students a day. And we're still partnering with schools out this summer, so we're going to provide meals for their summer program students. I always give a slide just updating you on the free and reduced rates. They stay fairly consistent around 12%. I will keep you posted on that. If you have any questions about that program. This year, because meals were free for all students, we didn't receive as many paper applications, However, more often than not these days, we're getting our information about students who do need meal support directly from New York State, from other programs. So looking to this coming school year, hoping to get back into the cafeteria and have students online being able to serve them. You know, we had to make a lot of menu changes when we were serving things in the classroom and in the library and moving food around. So looking to get back into being able to provide more options for students. Keeping it safe and sanitary, so making sure that we're keeping up with all of our processes that we normally would do. I mean, we were in food service, the hand washing people before it became, you know, everybody needed to wash hands. So we knew we were doing that, but sanitizing things and keeping up with our cleaning schedules and making sure that we're maintaining all of those processes correctly. We'll look at menu and service model considerations. So with meals being free again this coming year, we are thinking we will have an increase in our meal counts. If some of the restrictions are lifted and we can serve more students, say they can form a line and be a little bit closer than 6 feet to one another, we will be able to bring back some of our a la carte options at the middle and high school levels especially. So that may change what we need to be buying, how much staff we need to be having on, and how many lines we need to be operating. For example, looking at the middle school, if we are going to expand there at all, we are going to need another lunch line, another cashier, another point of sale to get all the kids through in time to have them also have time to eat. So we're looking at all of those things going into the fall. Another pinch point is just our transit. We bring food into the high school, which supports and sends food out to all the elementary schools. So we're seeing some pinch points that could happen if our meal counts go up any higher, that we will be needing to send more food out than we have space to. We will be needing to have more food in the elementary kitchen than there's space, cold, frozen, and dry to keep that. So we're looking at all those things as it gets closer, and we'll keep monitoring them in the fall to make adjustments during the school year as needed. So all of the pre-ordering that we did, this year with the forms, I mean, it was, Google Forms was new to me, and I've learned a ton about it through this year. I think that it could be a useful tool for our department in many ways. So we're looking at how we can keep that going, whether it is to provide staff with meals at different levels, to do like high school students who don't have a lunch period, to be able to keep a grab and go meal option ready for them. Because one of the things we've gotten feedback from is that to wait online is too long for them to make it. So they usually are bringing their own from home and eating between classes. We're bringing back cash payments. That was one of the things. We have drop boxes, and we asked that families, encourage them strongly not to bring cash, but we'll be bringing that back. We have keypad use for students to get on their, access their accounts, or their meal accounts where they have money if they need to pay for lunch. Now, meals are free again next year, so the use of that probably won't be necessary yet until a free meal would be going away for all students. And I'm keeping a close eye on that to see what happens at the federal level with USDA. There's a lot of push for free meals for all students to stay in K-12, but nothing concrete has happened yet, but I'm keeping a close eye on it. So looking at, we may look at something that would be touchless in the future for getting onto student meal account, to accessing their accounts though as well. You can do like an ID scan, but then they have to carry around a card. There's other solutions. And then next year, bringing back some a la carte items, we're still going to want to try to push the meal because that's where we get the reimbursement. Hoping that we'll be serving more meals, more volume of meals. We're going to continue at the younger grades with doing, normally we do participate in a program USDA has called Offer versus Serve, so students can opt out of some of the parts of the lunch tray. They still have to take a vegetable or a fruit as part of their lunch, but they can opt out of one or the other, and they can take, only one or two of the other items. So we have, this year, just been completely serving them everything that's on the menu, because it is the fastest way to get them through the line, get them through service. So we're going to keep that definitely at the younger levels and look at keeping it at the older levels, simply because it is most expedient. However, it may result in more waste, which is the goal of offer versus serve, to limit that waste so students might not take what they might not eat. So just want you to be aware of that in case you hear that, we are serving them everything that's on the tray. Now, there's benefits to that. I mean, students at the elementary level, I think, I have a 3-year-old myself. I think having the food on there and the exposure and seeing it for some students, even if they don't eat it at that moment, is a good, healthy thing. Balancing out the waste of them throwing it away, but maybe eating it by the time they're, in 3rd grade or something, they start to be getting used to that. So that is, and then also getting back to some of our environmentally friendly goals that we had gotten. So unfortunately, we had to switch to, for expediency and cleanliness, we switched to a paper tray and a wrapped utensil kit this school year, but hoping to get back to some of our initiatives where we were using hard trays and reusable flatware and other items that we were doing that were, we had gotten rid of bottled water at our high school, but we had to kind of bring it back to some level, but hoping to keep those goals to catch back up and then to keep pushing that forward in our department. So usually there's something on meal prices. As I've said, free meals continue for the next school year. The high school is going to remain on the school lunch and breakfast program. And as we bring a la carte items back, I'll look at a la carte pricing. We do a group bid with the South Colony and Guilderland schools. We just opened that bid a couple of weeks ago and are reviewing and awarding our vendors for this coming school year. Procurement is an issue. It's going to continue to be an issue. For an example, just this past couple of weeks, it's been hard to find the utensil kits, the paper trays. I've had to get subs for many of our food items. It's going to continue to be an issue in the fall, and it's going to probably raise prices. So be keeping a really close eye on everything that's coming in, what it's costing us. Can we get something a little bit less expensive without sacrificing quality of the meals that we serve? How can we keep the tray costs down with keeping that quality that that our students expect us to have on the tray and our families expect? So will be a challenge. Go ahead. Also, our breakfast counts, I did want to say, are increasing. So we have some elementary schools normally serving less than 10 students breakfast because we don't have a set time for breakfast at elementary. They're just coming in sort of before or after a first period class to get breakfast. Now, those counts are getting from 10 or less to now over 50 at some of our elementary schools. So that's another area we're going to have to look at, but also very good that students are taking advantage of the free breakfast at that level. So this is the financial part, looking at our revenues and expenditures, and then lastly, what we're looking at for next year's budget. So as you can see, lots of changes. So kind of just go line item. So if you look at lunch and breakfast, those are sales for meals. So actual 6/30/19 would be the last quote unquote normal year. So that's what we would expect. 6/30/20 would be where we had a shortened year with COVID and meals became free. And then projected at June 30th this year, it's 0 because all meals were free. We didn't sell any. we didn't have to take in local dollars from students or families for that. A la carte,
Can you just pause though?
yeah.
For a second, because don't some students, I know my student still depletes his school bucks because he goes back for other stuff.
So there's not much other stuff right now, but there's a little bit. So,
So what is, I don't know what my kid's doing then.
so at elementary school, all they can get is a 50-cent milk or a $1 bottle of water. At middle school, it's the same. And at high school, there are a few more options, but not many.
Willow, it's usually the bottle of water. That got us, yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't even drink water.
But it's really the only thing he.
I mean, it's honestly, it's almost every day. It's like $1.50, $1.50, $1.50 on his account. I don't know. Or I'll talk about it separately.
Oh.
I'll call you tomorrow.
Hey, I guess they just like to spend, huh?
Well, that's my kid.
So a la carte sales down to, we don't have as many offerings because we don't have as much, we're not able to have kids as close online. There's less time. There's less kids actually on site to purchase a la carte. So that's gone down. And staff sales, a little bit down, but they're still holding okay. So sales are obviously a lot less. Now, if you look at what the state and federal line is reimbursement, so that's reimbursement coming from USDA and the state of New York for meals we served. So obviously you can see that went from $250,000 to over $1 million. So that is really what saved us. And even though, so USDA food received is another benefit that USDA provides for our programs. We can get food that is called, if you've heard the term brown box, we can get food that's coming directly from a contract from USDA. That's the most efficient way to use the money that you're getting. You can also divert it to a company that will take that cheese and make a pizza and take the cost of the cheese away for you. So that's why this number is a little lower, because we did some of those other things like diverting. There were 2 other programs. One is a local foods program, so we were able to divert to Capital Roots, and then they brought us apples from Indian Ladder, and that was using federal funds outside of our program that were given to us. Then the other thing that we did this year, we started for the first time using a Department of Defense produce contract. So we had, so that money isn't in here either because it went to them, and then we in effect got produce from them, but we didn't have to spend money out of our budget to get that produce in. We've been using that for the past probably 3 to 4 months to get our produce, and the produce from has been lovely. So it's been a great program to be a part of. Catering, obviously, less, and then this year less, and then the transfer. So the FRPL or FERPL was before the high school got onto the USDA program. The school general fund was picking up a cost of still providing a free or reduced meal at the high school for students that qualified. Okay, so the general fund part of this is what the general fund picked up to make our account whole at the end of the school year. So last school year, because of the closure and our obviously inability to make a lot of the sales we would have if the schools had been open in the spring, we needed some funds to make our account whole. So it wasn't $300,000, but that was what was transferred. And next slide, maybe clear. So this is the expenditure side. So we spent less in food products for many of the reasons I talked about with the USDA foods, different programs that we could use the money that they give us to, and then supplies is much higher. The paper trays, the sport kits, the extra gloves, the extra cleaning supplies, a lot of things that we had to purchase a lot more volume on. We used different kinds of trays, the remote meals, all of the packaging that had to go into running that program definitely made our supply budget need to be, our supply costs higher. And the equipment line, I'll get to that in a little bit. So next slide, please. So in summary of looking at what's projected for the end of this year compared to priors. So last year, because of the closure in the spring from March to the end of the school year, we ended up with a net loss of $217,657. From the prior slide, that's just a combination of the $18,893 that was for funding us for providing free and reduced high school meals, and the $300,000 that was brought to the general fund. Now, $300,000 was brought to cover the we estimated a $210,000 last year loss. It ended up being $217 and change, and the extra funds, the $101,235 was for expenses we projected we might have to do some of these different meal costs. Like we had to buy 10 extra meal transit carts. We had to buy extra sheet pans so that we could set trays on the carts. Things that would allow us to provide the service we knew we were going to need to provide in the fall. This year, we're projecting a loss of $149,357. The balance we had from the last year's general fund transfer covered some of that, and we're looking at a $48,122 projected loss this year for the food service program. Yeah.
And that actually is better than we had projected when we were doing the general fund budget. We were projecting closer to 200, maybe 300,000.
Yep.
So that is improvement.
Yeah, we were definitely expecting more than that, and so that's a really good outcome on that.
And we do have the agenda item tonight
Yeah.
that authorizes a maximum of $150,000 to be transferred from the general fund into the food service fund to help offset that loss.
And I will say too that, so the 48,000, a good chunk of that is we had to, at the end of the year, purchase a replacement oven. So Hammergrail had a failed oven. Because Hammergrail's kitchen is going to be renewed in the bond, we're taking an oven from the high school and moving it and getting a newer oven for our high school kitchen. So a good chunk of that is to cover the cost of that emergency oven replacement. Okay. So looking at the budget for next year that we're hoping you guys will recommend or approve, we are hoping, we don't know all of what will happen next year. We have a lot of ideas of how next year will go, possibilities. Again, I am meeting with all of the administrators of all the different buildings and levels to see how we can make meal service happen in the upcoming school year, keeping students safe while providing them access to our meal program. So we're hoping to get a lot more a la carte out there, especially at the high school level. So we're going to be working very hard to figure out how we can run our program so that we make that available to students, especially if they're all back on site next fall. Adult sales, we're hoping we'll get back to our normal levels. Our state and federal funding, because free meals will continue next school year, we're projecting it will be even more. We're projecting a meal sale increase. Because the high school was on the program, we are now, those meal counts from our high school are increasing the amount of food, USDA food money that we get. So we're actually going to get more of that money, more of the ability to get those food products for essentially no cost out of our budget. And so we're looking at the possibility of what we will need this school year, hoping to have a break even next year. And I just wanted to say too that before COVID hit, we did have 3 years of break even or better status where we were growing a little bit of a fund balance for our program to use to maybe expand and upgrade some equipment and those things, but we did get pretty much wiped out with the loss of sales due to school closures. So, and expenditures, you know, equipment, it's much higher this year just because we did have to replace that oven and buy some equipment at the start of the school year, so we're hoping we won't have as much of those costs. Food products, we are hoping to have a bigger budget for food because we're selling more. And yeah, again, just hoping for a break even, hoping to use more. I mean, supplies, we're keeping the same. I don't know if we'll be able to use less, but we will try to use more of our renewable trays and flatware as we are able to do that with staffing and time. Oh yeah, any questions?
Yeah, could I ask
Yeah.
them real quick? First, like, what you guys have done the last 15 months is like nothing short of a miracle. No, really, just being honest. You know, you guys are
Yeah.
heroes, and I don't mean that in any facetious way. I mean it. Like, you know, you think, what, like 18, 19 months ago, we're sitting here, okay, we're going to redo our cafeteria, and we should really be focusing on a la carte and all these things, and then everything just blew up, you know. And what was fascinating was that you were the face of our district for a period of time. I mean, like, you were the people that people saw, you know,
Yeah.
because the schools were closed.
From March
you
to
know,
the
so
end of June last year, that is the truth. We were, I think Judy, bless her, was coming to the building because she felt bad that we were coming to the building, you know, like, we were here.
Yeah, I mean, who's the
was
person-
I did not come to this building. Like, I did not come.
yeah, like, who's the person that you see the most? I mean, it was you guys, you know. And the couple things that I would say, one thing, I would be curious to see how this plays out over the years to come because of the free food. It has introduced, I think, a whole new group of kids to the cafeteria that would not have bought. So I'll be curious to track the data over, well, this year's free again, but the following year, I mean, if we see that we start having to pay again, how that affects it. And the other thing is that a question about going up to $300,000 in the a la carte this year from 34 this year. Like, I hope we do that, but like, just do we have a plan just in case it doesn't? Because that's just like, it would be a huge gap to fill. That's the only thing.
Well, what I'll say is the thing with a la carte is if you don't sell it, you don't have to buy it. So the gap won't be all that huge. And if we're not selling as much a la carte, it opens the door for selling more meals. So the hope is that if we're not able to serve a la carte, we'll just put all of our chips into serving more meals and get.
Well, that makes sense. So if you're not selling a la carte, you don't have to buy the product. So it's not even, okay, I got it. That makes
But
sense.
then, and
Gotcha.
then
Yep.
hopefully we'd sell
No,
more meals
gotcha.
and get more reimbursement. So, you know, if we're focusing all on meals, the reimbursement does cover the cost of that, and we can flex to what we're, you know, it's a balancing act. You know, like, you don't want to lower your costs so much for what you're putting on the tray that it's not good. You want to make sure that you're giving students access to fresh and good product. You know, we're at the middle school. Students want more vegetarian options. For the last few years, they've been asking for that, families and students, and so we've been looking at it, and we've been putting some things out there. We put a Morningstar Farms veggie nugget on the menu just this month. Chicken is hard to get right now, so I said, you know what, we're going to try veggie nuggets.
My kids like those.
They're
were good.
delicious.
They told me about them. They liked them.
Yeah, they're delicious.
So thank you.
Anything else?
I just wanted to also thank you for all the work that you've done this past year plus.
Thank you. My crew is to thank as well.
I just have a quick question about the summer 2021 program that you were discussing. I know a lot of families are thinking, you know, I'm not financially strapped. I feel like if I take a free meal, I'm taking it from someone who deserves it more, or I'm taking advantage of the school. So what do you say to those families, and is there an actual benefit to the school if you
Yeah, great question. We addressed this in the survey we sent out, the information that we sent out to all the families, asking if they would give us information of whether they'd participate and how often. It's a reimbursement program. So if you participate, you're bringing reimbursement money into our school. So the more people that participate, the more money comes into our program. There's no maximum amount of people that can participate, and by you participating, there's nobody that's not getting access to it. So it is free for all who want to take advantage, and the more who participate, the better product we can provide, because the more money we have to do our work.
It's a difficult concept.
It is. It is. Yep.
I just have one question. When or where did you learn to spin straw into gold? Because you really have done a magnificent job of taking what could have been an absolute disaster and turning it into really a wonderful face for the school, for the community. And you and your team deserve all the kudos you get.
I appreciate those words. I agree about my staff. They've had to change, and it's funny, in normal year, normal time, they don't like change, but COVID somehow helped them. If there's a silver lining, it's that, my staff learned that they could adapt. And they did a great job doing it. So I feel that they saw their impact on students and families. They got to see it firsthand, so it was really,
And one of the things, just a comment from last summer, is that the staff were writing little messages on bags and coming up with really cute things. So one time I was in the back and they were doing all this cute stuff. And the kids and families, it was such a terrible time, just looked so forward to getting those meals because of the staff's efforts. They really just put a lot of extra into it, so.
They did.
Yeah.
So,
Awesome.
Great tone at the top. Thank you, Elisa. And yeah, service with a smile and great food still coming out of that kitchen despite COVID.
We really do serve really good food for school food service. I
will attest to that.
I'm trying not to toot my own horn, but we do a really nice job.
In the mornings before school, right outside my house is where all of the neighborhood kids congregate to play basketball and stuff before they all have to go get on the bus or whatever. And this morning I overheard, "What's for lunch today?" "Cheesy croissants," and all the kids, I'm talking 12 different kids, all go, "Yes!" It's a big winner this year.
Right.
And I loved seeing the veggie, the plant-based meal and the smoothie tomorrow. I think I just encourage more creative inclusion like that. I think
I'm really excited about the smoothie. I hope it goes well. First time is always tough, but yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elisa.
Thank you. Next up, plan for use of federal funds. Judy.
So this could be the briefest presentation you have ever heard me do. I have about 6 slides just to give you an overview of what we're looking at. Just when you thought you couldn't take any more educational acronyms, we have 2 more for you. ARP, which is the American Rescue Plan, one component of the federal monies, and then ESSER, and this is actually up to ESSER 3 now, is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief. So these are all the federal programs that have made ample resources available to all schools. And as you know, we have goals that we want to accomplish, and it's a whole lot easier to do when we have resources coming into us in terms of the funding. So these numbers are what has been awarded to the district for those 2 separate grants as of this date. Now, last week, they announced that the allocations were changing and there might be even more money coming to the district. So we will update you when we get those new totals. But in the Coronavirus Response and Relief Appropriations Act, which came out in December of 2020, we have almost $4.2 million allocated to the district that has to be used over a 3-year period ending September of 2023. And for the ARP funding, which was most recently approved in March, gives us almost $1.9 million that has to be used by September of 2024. So we do have to submit an application for this. We originally had a date of June 15th, and we filed for an extension to go to July 15th, knowing the timing of the board meeting tonight, obviously wanting to present the plan before we submitted it. And then simultaneously, they ended up extending the deadline. So anyway, it is officially June 30th, but we do have until July 15th in order to submit that plan. And the other thing to keep in mind is this does not run with the district's fiscal year, which is a June 30th fiscal year. These run along with our title grants, the other federal monies that we have. So they are generally ending on an August 31st date, starting with September 1st. So if you go to the next slide, please, the monies that we have to be allocated into different purposes, and $933,000 of it needs to address learning loss. So this is a plan that Dave and Jody are putting together to help deal with, primarily it'll be in the form of either after-school programs or summer school enrichment activities. So we're not going to be able to spend the bulk of that in this summer because there's really not enough time to put that together, but we'll end up spending the rest of that in the out years on the grant. The remaining almost $5.1 million is to help us with those extra costs that we've been incurring in the COVID environment, and to help cover, its eligible funding includes things for your PPE, your extra cleaning and sanitizing supplies, and then any other activities. It's a very broad category to maintain your operations and continuity of services. So they are giving you quite a bit of flexibility in terms of how you spend down this money. They do want to have you focusing these resources, helping students who need extra support. And the good thing about Bethlehem is that, as you've seen, as we've built up our budget, we have provided these resources for our students as part of the budget that we just adopted. So the risk, if you start putting these monies into salaries and other things like that, is we talk about this fiscal cliff. So what happens if you bring on extra staff and put extra resources in there? When this money runs out, then you're looking at either a loss of services and or a loss of staffing. So as we were developing this plan, knowing that we provided resources within the actual budget, we were trying to focus on one-time costs that would benefit us, would help us advance our programs, but wouldn't leave us feeling this loss of funds when the money was gone. So as you'll see from the plan, one of the things that we did, and we just talked about this with Greg's presentation on the capital project, is there are some elements within the proposed bond that are eligible for use of this federal money. So some of the elements, particularly for the ventilation systems or for working on expanding either the way we structure the indoor classrooms and or the outdoor classroom spaces, which are those shade structures or outdoor pavilions, we can use some of this federal money to offset those costs. So it'll still be part of the bond, but it will be the funding source of the federal dollars that we can use for those purposes. Okay. If you go to the next slide. So what we identified as great options for this funding, of course, the very first one is the allocation for the learning loss, which is about the $933,000. Again, when the plan gets submitted, it's going to be covered for this full 3-year period. So these allocations between the years are likely to change, but we just wanted to give you an idea of how we would try to break out the spending between the different fiscal years. So in addition to identifying the learning loss plan, we also have increased the outdoor classroom spaces. In the current bond proposal that Greg had presented, we have 5 outdoor classroom spaces included within that. We thought it would be great if we could offer that at all of the buildings, so we've bumped that up to 7 classroom spaces, and that's around $930,000. Additionally, we talked about the canopy structure. This has been on the desired list of things to have that would benefit the high school program, which would be right outside these windows here, where we do have some picnic tables set up for the students. But part of the difficulty is the sun really beats down on that area in the afternoon. So it would be able to get much more use if we are able to put up a canopy shade structure in that side area as well. So that can be used for the meal program. You could have classes and meetings out there as well. It just becomes more usable when you have the overhead protection. Then, and that's $183,000. The next 3 items are all ventilation projects that are included within the bond work. So that's close to $1 million, and ventilation is very much a part of what we've been talking about with our COVID planning, air circulation, the filters, and just exchanging the air on a more regular basis. So updating those systems checks the box in terms of the eligibility and gives us a funding source to help lower the amount that we would have to bond for that work. And then also included in the bond, Greg had just touched on this tonight, are the pit areas within Hammergrail and Glenmont. And because that is essentially a flexible instructional space, that also qualifies for funding under the ARP and ESSER monies. Okay. So that is $114,000. The remaining funds, we've talked in every budget cycle, I think for at least the last 3 years, about how old the classroom furniture is in the district and how wonderful it would be if we could update that. We had discussions with the architects and with the stakeholder groups trying to identify what is the best structure for a flexible classroom. And of course, with COVID, what we found is you have to have everybody spaced apart. You're all facing up front. Well, that works for COVID, but what we want to be able to do is also use that furniture so that we can push it together into more collaborative spaces as well. So we've identified through these Classroom of the Futures, what works best for the instructional environment. So we would like to use about $2.7 million of that funding to help get those equipment items in the classrooms taken care of. And that will, of course, free up future resources for us in the budget. So that is roughly the plan where we think it would make most sense to spend down on those monies. And the only thing that we might change relative to the capital project is the addition, I mentioned, of 2 additional outdoor classroom spaces. So we might want to add that into the bond as well, just to keep things uniform in terms of all of them in the budget or in the bond, as opposed to only 5 out of the 7. Okay.
Judy, the classroom furniture, didn't we have a line? I think we had a line last year in the budget for classroom furniture, and I think that same line was there this year.
And we had reduced it. Originally, the board had asked us
Right.
to put in $75,000, and when we were trying to dial back on our expenditures, we had lowered that to $50,000.
Okay,
So-
and this is in addition to the 50, or does it replace the 50?
This is in addition to that. So we
Okay.
could probably use that $50,000 for other things that
That
are
was
needed within the district.
what I was going to
because
suggest.
we have this resource, yes.
Right.
Yes.
Well, it's just crazy how much it costs to get new furniture for a single room. I mean, it's 5 figures for a single room.
Yeah.
So, you think that money's going to buy like 8 million chairs. It's not.
Right.
It's a lot of money, but once you see, how fast it goes, it's awesome. I'm so excited that we're doing it, but that number has to be that big if it's going to be a significant impact for the district.
Right. Those 40-year-old Broncos have served us well. But, and the other thing is why this is a great option for the plan is because SED will only give you building aid the very first time you buy furniture. So as we're doing these replacements, it's not eligible for building aid. So again, a perfect use of these monies that help get us to uniform furniture for the classrooms. And that based on the few classrooms that we've been able to do just through the operating budget are just so wonderful in the classrooms. The teachers love them, the students love them, and it has that necessary flexibility. And it's been durable, it's been holding up very well, so that is the proposed plan. So we do need to post this on our website for public review and public comment. And then we'll submit the plan, and once it is approved, we have to go through the very similar process for submitting the grant applications and cost details that we would for any of our other federal grants. And if what we're envisioning now changes, we have the ability to update it with the modification down the road, if anything else presents itself.
Judy, where did you guys come up with the 20%?
It's required.
That's the federal requirement?
That's the number that
Yeah.
they, okay.
Yeah.
When you post it online, can we also post wherever the requirements are for how the money is spent? I think that would be helpful for people to be able to.
That's the only, well, there's categories though, so we
Right,
could
there's
do that.
categories,
Yeah.
and they keep updating that guidance, and
we can do
that
that.
was also, along with the increase in funding, the guidance was coming too. So it's been a big effort, I think, for the state to come up with that guidance as well, just because of how quickly it arrived, so.
Yeah, and this is happening in every service sector. There's federal
Yes.
dollars that are being given that nobody knows how to spend. And when you think you have a great idea, there's some reason you can't use it for that great idea. So I just think being able to look at those side by side for people who are interested in it would be helpful to understand why
Sure.
decisions were
It
made.
might even be a good idea if we could provide a link to the state ed website with the guidance. That way, when it gets updated, it'll still be current. Not that it'll change, but.
One never knows.
Yeah.
Good idea.
So,
Minute
but it's
by
a
minute.
resource, and it's the most current resource, so I think a link does make sense.
Judy, I just have a question about the classroom furniture. I know, Chris was talking about how expensive it is, and obviously it is. But 2.7 million does seem like a really large figure. So I was wondering if we could get a little more information about what kind of furniture we're thinking of investing in, how it's used, what it looks like, what makes it flexible, and whether or not buying all this furniture at once means that 20 years from now, we're going to have to expend another 2.7 million to replace everything all at the same time. Because I know that's a concern, that's why we're doing $75,000 at a time every year, so that it was kind of rolling. And if we have this huge expenditure of one thing all at once, I'm concerned that it's all going to fall apart all at once.
We will look at that. Obviously, we try to take care of it, and we, as you've seen with some of our other assets, we assess their condition, and then we try to stagger those replacements so that you're not looking at 2.7 million all in a single year, so.
And we could provide even some pictures of some of the flexible furniture
would be
we've already
great.
purchased with the operating budget. And also in the meetings we've had, what some of the primary teachers want is different than intermediate teachers versus middle high school. So it's a variety of furnishing, and could potentially, there's also, you can purchase technology or equipment, so we may find there's a need there this is 3
Right.
years, so.
Absolutely, I just don't want us to purchase 2.7 million of the same thing,
Right.
and then be stuck with this
Right,
cyclical, huge replacement.
right, yeah.
Yep, great point, thank you. Okay,
Thanks, Judy.
thank you. Don't get used to that, next one will be longer.
Last but not least, we have a presentation on the BC plans for the K-12 wellness curriculum. by Dr. Davers.
Yes, so I'd like to, thank Greg and Elisa and Judy for warming up the audience. I promise to stick to within the hour framework that I've been given, so.
Jody, you didn't give him an hour, did you?
No, you know me, never.
So just to give you a little bit of background, so as you know, we restructured our athletic director position, where Len is now considered the director of athletics and wellness. And in the hiring of a new K-12 physical education, health, and facts supervisor, we're really taking a closer look at our wellness program as a whole. Recognizing that we have areas of overlap, and within that area, we also recognize that we have gaps within the program as well. So we met as an administrative team about 2 weeks ago to take a sort of a look at all of the components of our wellness program, and this was just the first of what will end up being several meetings. So I'm just going to kind of give you an idea of what it is that we talked about, so you can see where it is that we're trying to go with this concept. So sort of our working draft is that the purpose of the program is to empower students to balance physical, social, mental, and emotional health by providing learning experiences leading to the development of resiliency, confidence, critical thinking, goal setting, time management, and responsible decision-making skills. And we sort of determined that these attributes are accomplished through really 8 different areas or programs within our schools. We have our physical education program, health education, social emotional learning, library sciences, our DARE program, our core academic program, family consumer sciences, and then interscholastic athletics, which obviously is more 7-12. But these are sort of all of the components that loosely make up our wellness curriculum, if you will. So we wanted to take a look at how do each of these areas address wellness, and where are we, again, overlapping, and where do we have some gaps. So I'm just going to give you an idea of what we did. So we looked at all grades K through 12, and we looked at each of those 8 areas. So obviously for elementary, you wouldn't have, say, facts or interscholastic athletics, but we could look at all of the other areas. So this is what we started with. We basically broke up into groups. Some groups did K1, others 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And we identified all the things that we are either doing or things that we sort of have the ability to do within the programs that we have, so that we can start to see what it is that we're offering versus what it is that we still need to offer. Also recognizing that sometimes we're offering the same lessons in 2 or 3 different areas, but if we're not using common language, that becomes very confusing to kids. All right, so it's also recognizing that, yes, some messages do need to be repeated. If we're talking about, say, cyberbullying, yes, it makes sense to talk about that in different avenues within the classroom throughout the day. But if we're using different language in each of those classrooms, that becomes confusing to kids. So our PE program, obviously traditional type things that you would see within a 3rd grade physical education program. Health education. We use the Health Smart curriculum. Now, we don't have time to get through all of these, but these are all of the things that are accessible within the program. So again, trying to prioritize which ones that we really need to cover, and making sure that the ones that we're covering here, health education at the elementary level is handled by both the classroom teacher and really our counselors. They do a lot of work, especially with the social emotional health pieces. So like bullying, myths and facts, reporting bullying, that's handled within the classroom. That's also handled again when we're working with our counselors. And here's some more topics. It gets into some nutritional ideas, which again, our food services can obviously support that, as you heard from Elisa. Some of the pressure cooker and where does pressure come from? Again, that's where our counselors also offer support. Social emotional learning, again, these are traditionally offered through our counseling center. But again, working with students on growth mindset, diversity, sharing friends, and so forth. And again, some of these areas overlap with our health curriculum and our PE curriculum as well. So you can see there's bullying again. So sportsmanship obviously has overlaps with all sorts of areas. Library science. So one thing, you might not recognize is that our librarians do a lot of work with our students in digital citizenship. So we use the Common Sense Media curriculum. And again, depending on grade level, they get into these lessons. A lot of it focuses on, how to deal with online responsibilities, how to, it gets into, the idea of passwords with students, online responsibilities, so dealing with social media. Yeah, so, and identifying mechanisms to ensure that students are not only doing the right thing online for themselves, but also, working with peers to make sure they're doing the right thing, and just creating, a good community. So here's some other ideas. It gets back into the digital medium. Again, this sort of goes into some of what we do with our social studies too, in terms of being able to identify, authentic materials that are true and haven't been altered. The same can be, teaching children how, photos and videos can be altered, and that, don't believe everything you see. So this also ties into our DARE program. Now, right now, we only really deal with our DARE program as fifth graders, but there's actually a K-12 DARE program. So again, in our discussions, we just looked at, what are some options in third grade, say, that the DARE program, that our school resource officers could help us with. And, the DARE program, you can see safety, responsibility, risk, medicines, substances, and conflict management. All of those items already appeared within either our health curriculum, social emotional curriculum, or the Common Sense Media curriculum. So we can, leverage our school resource officers potentially to help with some of those lessons as well. So these aren't all standalone programs in the way that they overlap. And then our core academics, obviously, I just put some social studies topics here, but communities around the world, global citizenship, culture, customs, traditions, language, religion. These are all things that, kind of fall also within the diversity umbrella that lead to overall wellness and understanding of, how to get along with one another within the classroom, within the community, and within, the greater world. So that's, we spent a whole day, and that's really all we got through, was just sort of trying to map out what it is that we currently do, what are some things that we know are available, but that we might not necessarily be doing yet. And then our next step is to really dig deeper into each of these topics to make sure that we are hitting all of the crucial areas K-12, but that we're also within each grade level, appropriately addressing the items and making sure that when it's, the important topics that are addressed by more than one person or more than one group, that we're using common language. Because, when students get, the same message but with different language, it becomes very confusing to them, and they feel like they're getting a different message, but they're really not, and they don't know how to act upon that. A really easy example to give is at the high school, we have the Department of Health pushing in to do lessons with kids, and then we have Unity House coming in to do lessons with kids. And they both present essentially the same lesson, but we found that the language that they're using is totally different, and the kids thought it was two totally separate topics. So just really making sure that, we're using common language. This kind of goes back to what we're doing with RTI for behavior too, right? We're ensuring that classroom teachers, aides, cafeteria, all staff are using the same language so that students understand when their behaviors are being redirected, why they're being redirected, and what the appropriate response is. So again, we're very, very preliminary in terms of where we are with this, but this is something that we're going to be working on extensively over the next year to ensure that, we do have a really cohesive and well-articulated wellness program.
I just wanted to reiterate my previous request that we have a standalone agenda item at some point to talk about SROs and the DARE program sort of more in detail, how it works. I understand maybe there's a plan to use it differently, and I know that there's a lot of community discussion and concern that I think people would like to articulate to the district. So I just would like, again, to see that as a separate item where the public knows that that's up for discussion.
Anyone else have questions for Dave? Possibly the benefit of going last.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Next on the agenda is our recognition of submitted public comment. First, we did have a number of comments that came in from coaches and booster clubs in support of including a turf field in the bond proposal. We had a question come in from Bob Hussar about attendance at the graduation at the TU Center. I know that the guidance is changing daily, so I'd like to refer this comment to Dave Domel to respond to. And then we had 3 comments that came in, one from Robert Anna, one from Kate Torrey, and one from Sue Ellen Moose, expressing interest in a universal pre-K program and looking for information about what's going on with respect to that. So, Jody, I didn't know if you could just quickly just reiterate what we're doing.
Sure. So we are in the process, we've almost got the RFP done, where our plan is to probably send that out within the next week or so. We would give it a good month. There's quite a bit of requirements that people have to provide in the RFP back if they're interested. So that would take it to probably the, I don't know, mid to late, probably July, late July, realistically, with the holiday week in summer. So we would be probably, if we get any RFPs back, we would be looking at them sometime late July, early August. But I know there's been questions, will there be something in place for September? And I've said highly unlikely. You know, we just found out as part of the end budget process that we received money. Providers weren't prepared for this, nor were school districts. So we'll see what happens. We will let people know when the RFP goes out, though.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next, number 6, action items. A, finance action items. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following finance action items 1 through 11.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. B, professional personnel action items. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following professional personnel action items 1 through 30.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? C, support personnel action items. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following support staff action items 1 through 8.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes. D, other action items. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following action items 1 through 3.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes. Item 7, future meetings and events. Friday, June 25th at the Times Union Center at 6:30 p.m. is our commencement celebration for the class of 2021. And on Tuesday, July 6th at 7 o'clock, we have the board organizational meeting, anticipating an executive session at 6 o'clock beforehand. Seeing no need to go back into executive session, could I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.